Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge, where we're not looking at a movie a minute at a time, we're actually looking at the life of an interesting individual moment by moment, and having a good time along the way. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host, Walt Murray.
And Walt, this has been a crazy week for me, and you know I do a lot of fill-in work for what I like to call the 50,000-watt blowtorch of free speech in Atlanta, biggest radio station in the Southeast, in the 7th biggest market in the country. So when WSB calls, I do tend to come running.
Well, and you should. I mean, any opportunity to, get in front of an audience like that and make them think that you're intelligent enough to have an opinion, that's a good thing.
Well, I heard they stumbled across this podcast and immediately started second-guessing my choice in character with you being involved.
I would say that would definitely taint your resume.
But no, apparently they were getting ready for a big announcement this week, and so that hit this morning. I got the news 2 days ago that I'd be filling in all week long for the evening news, where that's the drive time radio, and so Eric Erickson normally is the host of that. But Eric also has his own syndicated network across the state of Georgia, separate from WSB, and I was already asked to fill in 3 days for that coming up. I was like, wow, Eric's going on vacation. Nobody wants to backfill. Turns out the big announcement today, Eric is going to be the Atlanta replacement for the 12 to 3 Rush Limbaugh spot. Eric Erickson moving to 12 to 3.
Well, and, politics aside, I know, Rush Limbaugh has been the 500-pound gorilla in that time slot
at least that big.
30 years. And so when he got sick, of course, there was a lot of speculation about, what's going to happen, how are they going to handle that slot. So I guess that's beginning to shake out now. I assume that a lot of stations probably had a contract through the end of the month.
I don't know how that works. It may be yearly, and they're going to pay the price to break it, or they're going to keep it intact and just go ahead and still put somebody else on instead. I'm not into the whole business side of it, but that was the big breaking news today. It happened a little after noon, at least at the time of this recording. And so I guess I get to be the bridge that gives them all that sort of a week to collect their thoughts, move to the bigger penthouse apartments in the WSB towers, and I'm basically going to get left behind to sweep up the leftovers.
Well, there were worse places to sweep up, to be honest with you, so that's good that they had enough confidence in you to be able to come in there and do that. And I know, again, I mean, politics aside, for people in the conservative world, losing Rush Limbaugh was a tough loss. And there's still a lot of emotion for a lot of people. He was a big icon. And
I think regardless of your political affiliation, if you try to convince yourself that Rush was not an impact on the world of talk radio, you're just fooling yourself. I mean, there's no one who made a bigger impact to what that industry is than Rush.
No, I agree. And I think wherever you fall on the political spectrum, he has influenced talk radio across the board, and he even influenced sports talk radio. He's influenced entertainment talk. He really has been a gigantic influence in all media.
Yeah, and you don't have to like his politics, but you have to appreciate the entrepreneurship. A guy who had been fired from multiple radio stations for wanting to talk, and they said, we don't pay for you to talk. Nobody cares about what you want to talk about, to now becoming the guy who had at any point in time 20 million individual listeners every week.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And
it's an incredible story. So
it is an incredible story. And, he didn't have a college education. He talked about that a lot. And, he's talked about both how that was a bit of a detriment to him at times and how it worked in his favor at times. But I think he's a great example of you put your nose to the grindstone, you go work hard, and you go make things happen for yourself. And
yeah, there's no doubt he believed in that sort of rugged American ideal of entrepreneurism, of picking yourself up, of being accountable to yourself, about getting out there and just working hard and finding the thing that you're good at and just make yourself valuable for that.
Yeah, and he's also an example of a guy who failed and was able to turn that failure around, learn from it, and use it to his advantage. And that's been something over the years that has impressed me with him. And at times when I've had, businesses go bad or whatever, I've been able to kind of take those same principles and say, you know what, I'm going to learn from this. I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm going to keep moving forward.
I would argue you can learn as much, if not more, from your failure than you do from your successes, and you need to be open to both. And I think we have a generation, we kind of touch on it from time to time, that was sheltered maybe a little too much, and now there's a group of individuals who don't know how to deal with adversity. They don't know how to deal when things don't go perfectly as planned.
Well, I don't know if you know this about me, but I have made some really stupid decisions in my life.
What, you?
I know that's a shock, but whether
we have the trampoline story, remember?
Yes, whether you're picking pine out of your armpits from crashing into a tree off a trampoline, or you're dealing with something else, or just bad things have happened. You just got kind of dealt a crappy hand. There's only one person who can fix that. And I think Rush preached that and preached that and preached that. And that's something that we can all appreciate no matter where we are coming from politically or otherwise. And I think that's just a good and enduring message that he left for us.
Well, before we bring in our guests, and I think all these things we're talking about, ironically, a lot of these traits are going to transcend right into our guest. But what else has been going on with you this week before we get to our guest segment?
Well, it's definitely spring. You'll probably hear that from me. I feel like I'm carrying around 50 pounds of concrete in my head from all the pollen. And at the same time, business is going crazy. So I've got surveillances going on. I'm hoping my phone won't ring while we're recording tonight. But it's that busy time of year for surveillances and but also ready to kind of go put a hook in the water, do some fishing and cut my grass for the first time. So it is definitely spring. I was hoping we'd get a snowstorm. The guys in Alabama were lucky enough to get one good. Well, not all of them were lucky because some of them lost power, but we missed the snow this year, so I'm kind of depressed about that. But
yeah, I don't think we're getting anything at this point.
Nah,
I think we're done. We dodged the bullet. Now we get to watch for tornadoes and summer thunderstorms.
Yes, absolutely. So, but I'm excited about our guest today too. I think we're going to have a great show, and he's got a lot to say.
All right, well, why don't we go ahead and ask the audience to put their hands together for a big round of applause to our guest, a former Alabama football player, former Navy SEAL. Are you ever former? I guess a retired Navy SEAL. Let's welcome to the Listener's Lounge, Mike White.
Pleasure, guys. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's actually the honor's ours. I don't know how much Walt told you about me. I actually was ex-Navy. I joined up just before the Gulf War I took on its official name. I joined during Operation Desert Shield, and I was in boot camp and went to A school as it turned into Desert Storm. I was in the intel community serving in the U.S. Navy.
Oh, wow.
But all my jobs were always here on this side. I never had to go into harm's way. You, in the Navy, are on the exact opposite side of where I was. You were at the tip of that darn spear.
Yeah, the pointy end. And, it was a lot of fun. We get a lot of people that talk about thank you for your service, or, there's a certain level of patriotism that I guess most people associate with going into the military in any branch. But, something about the SEAL community and the team aspect, the SEAL team piece. There's a inherent desire to just be part of a team, and an inherent desire to be accountable to your friends, your buddies, your teammates, whatever you want to call them. And I think a lot of that was bred into me at a younger time in my life as a football player. So I guess that was really the thought process when I got out of football, was more, what am I going to do now to be part of a team? What am I going to do to challenge myself, but also be part of that scenario as being a teammate? And I had no idea what I was getting into, literally. And you know, I was a bigger guy. I was an offensive lineman as a football player, so I didn't really have that athleticism as a runner. I certainly wasn't a good swimmer, but I didn't really know what I was getting into. Some guy handed me a magazine that looked interesting, you know, and it was a magazine called Gung Ho Magazine, and you could go search 1986 Gung Ho Magazine. You see this picture of all these guys doing these things, and I guess I was just said, yeah, you know, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. Let's do it. And that was about it. There was no lifelong, you know, desire to do something like that. I wasn't a guy that you would have ever even saw. I remember seeing the movie An Officer and a Gentleman. I guess it came out in 82, and thinking to myself, there's no way in the world I would do something like that. It just seems stupid to try to get to that, you know, do the military thing. It just seemed like, you know, no, that's not what I want to do. 4 years later, there I was in the exact same scenario. So it was, I guess that's kind of indicative of a lot of the things in my life. They've just, they really haven't, kind of like Walt, what you're saying, you know, you made some bad decisions, good or bad. I've made some decisions, you know, and they've led me to wherever I am. And, you know, There you go. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version. And I can share with you.
Oh yeah, no, we'll drill down a little bit. What I want to do is, if we can, let's back up then to your football days. Talk about, how did you first get picked up? I mean, because University of Alabama has always been known as a powerhouse in the SEC, but to be involved in that program, you had to have been an athlete that stood out in high school.
Yeah, you know, I was really beneficiary of being part of a really prestigious high school football program. And I had a coach who's retired, lives up on Lake Lanier now, but his name's Dewey Alverson. And he was one of the top high school coaches from that era, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, well, 60s and 70s, actually, in the state of Georgia. And so, you know, if he gave you a thumbs up, then that really made a lot of people kind of come look for it. I don't think I was that fantastic as a player in high school, but again, we had a really good school. We had a lot of guys that went off. You know, my high school probably had 7 or 8, you know, Power 5 type guys, and we had guys that go to Auburn and Clemson and a couple of Georgia, and so we had a lot of good players. Naval Academy, so it enabled me to just kind of ride on those coattails. And I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be self-deprecating or anything like that, but it really helped, you know. And there was just something about, even growing up in Georgia, there was just something about, you know, the aura that was Bear Bryant, Alabama, and just the whole thing, which is kind of fun to watch what's going on there now, because it's really like what Coach Bryant established back in those times in the 60s and 70s, just ramped up, just like everything else is. Everything else in the world is much more publicized, much more sensationalized. So what they have there is just an explosion of what was going on back there. And it was fun to listen to Nick Saban after the most recent national championship say that about Coach Bryant. You know, and he said, you know, none of this would be possible if it were not for Coach Bryant, for Bear Bryant, which is really kind of I mean, obviously Nick Saban's very, you know, insightful person and a student of the sport, but for him to realize that, hey, you know, this is really, it's little Alabama. I mean, it's not like Atlanta. Growing up in Atlanta, we had booming population, cosmopolitan city. It's Alabama. It's not really that great of a play. So why would the college football in that state, why would that school stand above all of the schools, you know, in the whole country? For one guy, you know, really one guy that started that. And then you got another guy that's taken it and gone off just exponentially. It's really cool to be part of that, and to watch them play now. It's really fun to say that, you know, you were part of that foundation a long, long time ago. But
doesn't that make a statement about leadership and how important it is to have the right person in the job kind of running the show?
Without a doubt. And I'll tell you, if you look around, and I know we're right over there in your own state, and this is not to disparage University of Georgia, although I would love to do that every chance I get.
Hey, 2 of my daughters graduated, so that's all I care about. I'm in hawk to that university for like the next 12 decades.
Yeah, no kidding. But college, that's another scenario altogether. But there's something about having the right person, the right traits, the right leadership, but you have to have that personality, that relentless personality that very few people really are willing to have. And I think it's a conscious decision. And I think that I look at the talent pool that's in the state of Georgia, and I look at Kirby Smart. Obviously, he, cut his teeth learning how to be a coach under Nick Saban. And he's gone over, and you kind of thought he was just going to implement that exact same program and follow that exact same formula and have very similar success. Hasn't happened the same way. And then again, that's just the way it is. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who's a high school teammate. He's a Georgia graduate, and he goes, yeah, well, it's still really early. I mean, you got to think about it. And I thought, Nick Saban was doing this in his second year at Alabama. I mean, just 2 years in, they were off and running to where they are right now. So it takes a special person, and that's why, not everybody can do it. And it's different.
Wasn't there a stat somewhere, and Walt, maybe you heard this too, because I know this was big, they were talking about it during the last national championship with Alabama, that if you look at all the coaches that served under Nick Saban that have gone on to be head coaches, none of them have been able to come back and beat Nick Saban.
Zero.
Yeah, none of them. Not a one.
Makes you wonder, did he keep something off? Did he not tell the other guys something magic?
I think as you look at those coaches, there's something in each one of them that is not Nick Saban.
Yeah.
It may be different in each one of those guys, but there's an element that is missing. And I think a lot of it for some of them is that relentless pursuit and that absolute eye of the tiger on winning. And when you look at him standing on the sidelines, recovering from COVID and screaming at a referee for a bad call, you just think that guy is weird and different, and he's a winner.
Yeah. There's an old saying, you talk about that, the record against the assistants. I remember Gene Stallings, when he was coaching against Bear Bryant, he said, it's kind of a cool line. He said, Coach Bryant taught me everything I know. Unfortunately, he didn't teach me everything he knows.
Right.
That's kind of where you see where some of these guys over in that are trying to climb that mountain.
Last season we had Randy Edwards on, and of course he's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you claim him as a friend.
An esteemed friend. So
he's a great
esteemed
guy. And we asked him a question. And I'd like to ask you the same thing. What was it like to play for Bear Bryant? I know there's the kind of persona for those of us on the outside looking in, but what was it like to play for him?
Well, I'll tell you this, there may be far more insightful people that play for Coach Bryant, but I tell people this. I was 18 years old and 19, 20 when he was our coach. And man, I'm just trying not to embarrass myself and embarrass my family. I'm not really looking at the big picture at this stage of the game. I'm just kind of, like most 19, 20-year-old guys, I'm just trying to figure it out. I was really, at that stage, I was, I got to play a decent amount in my sophomore year when he was there, but it wasn't like I was just a household name. And so I really don't have any of these, what's it like to have played? Now I can tell you what it is like to have played for him. And I think that's just especially working in the state and living in the state, it does a lot of things. A lot of people look at that as, and honestly, it should be very prestigious because it was, but it also lets people know how old you are. I sit back and I think about those times, and I don't really have a lot of great life lessons that I learned as a, under the tutelage of Bear Bryant. But I will tell you this, it kind of instilled in me that willingness to accept new challenges and to just be able to deal with adversity, deal with the hardships of getting up in the morning and having to do stuff that you really don't want to do, creating that discipline in yourself and wanting to be really good at it, And so I think that led me to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, to where I've always just kind of had that mentality. And I try to pass that along to my kids. My son is a professional baseball player, and trying to, and to have always been that person for him that kind of taught him these life lessons that I learned, throughout my just growing up and then on into my adult life, just to kind of create that discipline in yourself. And I don't really know much about what other programs were doing back when I was playing, but, Alabama had a lot of success, and we were pretty damn special.
While you were a football player and you were attending the University of Alabama, did you have an idea on what you needed to do education-wise? Did you have a goal? Because I know we already kind of hinted that the Navy was the last thing on your mind, but what were you thinking you were going to do while you were getting your education?
Was funny because Randy is a successful lawyer, and I really wanted to be a lawyer. I thought that was my calling, and I think had I finished school a little more on time, I probably would have gone to law school, and on the rest of it would have never happened. But it's when I was in school, and this is good advice to anybody and about anything, whether it's athletics or academics or just business or whatever. But when you have somebody who tells you you're doing something really well, it kind of makes you want to continue to do that, and it inspires you. And I had an English professor, James Raymond, when I was a freshman at Alabama, and he recognized that, I was pretty good at writing and I had a good handle on the English language. I had really good teachers in high school. So, I majored in English in college, for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons was that, somebody told me I was good at it.
Right.
The other reason it was that, it was just entertaining. It was more entertaining to study by reading a novel than it would be just reading a textbook. And I guess that was kind of the thing there. And there was also the irony, when you're a guy growing up and playing football and everything, there was this sense of irony that, that you also, knew something about Chaucer. And so, maybe I thought that was kind of cool. And that I thought it would be something that would kind of set me apart. I don't know.
Hey, I've got no problem with that. That was one of my backgrounds, was English literature, creative writing, performance, things like that, as well as my technical background. I just loved having that side to escape into. I had a boss I worked for. One of the first jobs I ever had. It was a guy who loved the University of Alabama, ironically, loved college football. But this guy that I worked for said, we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need bankers. There's no doubt about it. But even they want to go home and curl up with a good book or watch a good movie. So you got to have creative people too. You
got to be. I mean, and you find it even just in everyday life, just to be able to communicate, and to be able to write eloquently is really something that has escaped a lot of people, especially people from my generation, today. And I mentioned to you guys while we're off air that my father passed away yesterday. And all three of my children wrote some little tribute to him that they posted on social media. And all three of them are just eloquently written. And I think that I had something to do with that because, I always made sure that they paid attention to the details of how to actually to write and express themselves. And it's kind of a lost art with, a lot of the social media of the day and a lot of texting and things, abbreviated. And I don't think people really take the time to really understand how words matter. And
they do matter. One of the things that I do on the side, did a lot of web development for a while. And one of the things that we just always look at is, well, what reading level should we be writing content? They're always that worried about making sure. When I started, this was 12 years ago doing my own stuff. It was at a 10th grade reading level. We are now writing at a 6th grade reading level in just over a decade. That's how far it's dropped, that they feel like the average reader, the average reader can only process a 6th grade reading level now. And that's sad.
It is. It's a shame. And again, I think I overheard you guys talking in the first segment when you were saying something about just things in generations and how they change. And you don't have to. there's no rule that says that we have to dumb things down. There's no rule that says we have to raise our children to different standards and they don't have to really adhere to kind of an old school mentality. There's none. And my kids are, they don't fall in line with me in a lot of things, politically or just societally or anything like that. But the things that are really, truly important at your core, I think they do that extremely well. And
yeah, you know what? You were probably like us, and I know Walt's the same way. There was no sparing the child from adversity or the truth. If you screwed up on a paper, it wasn't the teacher's fault. It was your fault. If you didn't do well on the field, it's not your coach's fault. It's your fault, Yeah. We didn't coddle them. And we know now as they're adults, they've come back, and you maybe have had these same conversations as adult children now coming back to you. They said, we hated the fact that you wouldn't just tell us how great we were all the time when we were in middle school and entering high school. And we look back now and go, that's why they didn't do it. Now we get it.
There's these. My children have definitely been. They've. My oldest is 31. My youngest 27, and they've all had the opportunity to fail.
Yeah,
they've all had the opportunity to make some bad decisions and get their teeth kicked in a little bit, and they're all extremely strong as a result of that.
You got to have it. You got to. I fully believe that you have to learn from failure as much as from success.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that.
Well, I've also made sure that when I have had things that I'm not proud of or things that didn't go my way, to sit down and explain to my kids, hey, here's what's going on. Here's my part of that. Here's what I would have done differently, but here's what I'm doing moving forward.
Yeah, I think it helps you, to not always seem like this infallible character. My children have all seen that in me. I've made some bad decisions, I'll tell you this: what I do now may seem, and I wrote it in my bio. I'm in the commercial real estate business. I'm the general manager of the largest shopping center in the state, and I take a lot of pride in it because it's a really important job for a lot of reasons, but. Told my kids, this is really what I feel like everything has really kind of led me to, whether it was, and I know we might want to talk about some of the other things that happened after the Navy, but the things in the realm of sports and then into the military and then on into the entertainment business and the security business and things that I've done have really just been all pieces of the mosaic, that have kind of created where I am now. And I was on my company's based out of Chicago, and I was going up to interview back in 2016, and I was on a train from the airport to the place in downtown Chicago, and this lady came up next to me. I don't want to say bag lady or like that, but she just was a little bit disheveled. And I was standing on the train, and she came up to me, and she didn't know me, didn't know anything about where I was going. She just looked at me and she said, "Everything that you have ever done in your life has put you where you are today." And then she sat down, went to another place in the car. I don't know. But I thought about that, and I thought about how prophetic that statement was. And I don't know what her purpose was, but I don't even know. Maybe it was something divine that was there, meant to tell me something. But truly, where I am today, and some of the circumstances, and we can share with them some of them, to a degree, that have gone on since I've been at my property. But it's been a center of social and injustice protesting. It's been a center of an officer-involved shooting. It's been a center of community violence, and the fact that I have gone through the things that I've gone through up to this point in my life really prepared me to be what I'm doing right now, and enabled me to do it really well. And so to see that, just being able to pass that along to people that are listening to your show, or pass it along to my family, that says, everything that you do in your life really is all part of your mosaic and all part of creating who you really are, and then sometimes you'll have those little out of body experiences where you stand back and you realize, looking at yourself, damn, this is because of I'm really equipped. I got the full armor. I know exactly what I need to do right now. And it's only because I've been able to go through this adversity. I've been able to be in this crucible and learn these things in a number of different ways, but it just prepares you for where you are. And it's kind of one of those Mark Twain moments where you go, it's the most important days of a man's life, or, the day that he is born. And then the next day is the day that he figures out why. And that's where I feel like I'm in that place right now where I've kind of figured out what I'm supposed to be doing,
That's incredible.
Well, one of the things I know I've wanted to ask you about, Mike, is you spent 11 years as a Navy SEAL from 86 to 97. Is that right? I think I've got this dates right.
Correct.
So could you tell us a little bit about that? I know you kind of talked a little bit at the beginning about stumbling into it, but how'd you become a SEAL? What'd you do as a SEAL? And, for those of us on the outside looking in, we don't know what that really is like.
Well, especially since you mentioned earlier, you weren't a big runner and you weren't a big swimmer. And I'm like, well, how the hell did you make it into the SEAL team?
It's really interesting because, SEAL, I don't know if your listeners, everybody knows that's kind of the thing that people associate with like this total badass, military type situation. But it's sea, air, land. That's the acronym. And it's truly that. It's truly a group of special operators that can operate in any medium, whether it's, through the water, on land, or jumping out of the airplanes and whatnot. But, it's something that really I had recognized when I was coming in, that was recognized as the most elite group of people in the military. So I thought, let's give that a shot. And again, that was the idea behind it. But, getting in, it really gave me an idea, because the training is really tough. I mean, it's really, really tough.
Yeah.
And it really you have to lean on something other than what you think you are. And I was able to kind of draw some inspiration really from peer pressure. I kind of created some, a guy like Randy Edwards, a guy I worked out with, and people that I was really close to in my football days. And I just really stuck around because out of fear of going home and telling them that I didn't make it. I really just didn't want to have to tell somebody that I had quit the training. And it was hard. It was really hard for me to make it through, just given my lack of the abilities to do some of the things that I was called upon to do. But I figured out a way to get through it. I figured out a way to make it, and figured out a way to get my body. And I tell you, crazy, I got hurt. My first Hell Week. Hell Week is a 6-day period where you pretty much you go through training. I mean, you go through the evolutions, and you really only get about 3 to 4 hours sleep cumulatively over the whole week. So each sleep you might get 45 minutes after the first 3 days of just being awake, and you're running, swimming, climbing, doing a number of really tough things just for an entire week. And it's really hard. I mean, it's legendary. People see videos of it all the time. But I got hurt the first time through. And while I was hurt, I got a chance to go over to another command. I went over to Special Boat Unit 13, and they had a opportunity to go to survival school. They said, "Hey, anybody want to go to survival school?" And raised my hand. Yeah, sure, I'll go. I didn't know what it was, but it was a 2-week long school. 1 week was desert survival, and the second week you get captured and you have to go through a simulated POW scenario. So you're a prisoner of war, and you get waterboarded, and you get tortured, and you have to go through all these different interrogation training. But essentially what you do for 2 weeks is you don't eat much. You pretty much starve for 2 weeks. I went into the training at about 215 pounds for this, this SEER training. And that's where I was when I was going through SEAL training. And when I came out just a little under 2 weeks later, I was 194 pounds.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
And I was like, and then my buddy, after I got back from SEER school, one of my friends said, "Hey, we're going to go for a run." So I went for a run with him one day, and I was running like I'd never run before in my life. And I went, "Hey, light bulb moment, take off about 20 pounds and you suddenly become a better runner." So that's what happened. I lost that weight, and then when I went back into training, I was able to keep up and do really well.
Excellent. Survival school is no joke, and I know it's meant to simulate. And you were in a different time. I think I made a comment to a buddy of mine who's a Marine. I was one of the last boot camps that they were still using CS gas in the gas chamber. They were still able to really be mentally and nearly physically abusive. They had kind of stopped, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, doing anything physical. But, I mean, you kind of need that. And you were in that old school where that was kind of like getting you ready because the enemy wasn't going to show you compassion. Right?
Yeah, it was a tough school, but it was still, you kind of had to play the game and you kind of had to understand what the scenarios were. Now, I tell you what it is. Now, because I was a SEAL, or at least a SEAL trainee, I did get the benefit. Not everybody did. I got the benefit of learning what it was like to get waterboarded. And you see that a lot. That was obviously a big thing back during the Abu Ghraib stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing things in these prisons over in, they were waterboarding people. And they talk about it in the movie Zero Dark 30. They show some examples of that. And it really sucks. It really, really sucked bad. So it was, to have been able to have said, yeah, I got that. I did that. That's something, So, but
yeah, not too many folks can say I have been waterboarded.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Yeah.
So how long does SEAL training officially last? I know you kind of had to recoup because you got hurt the first time. So
BUDS is 6 months, which sets it apart. Ranger School, I went through Ranger School. That's 58 days. There are a lot of programs in the military that are tough, but they're not as long. And I think the 6 months is what really sets it apart. And after the 6 months, then you go, and this was back when I was in, they've streamlined it and consolidated and standardized it quite a bit. So it's all kind of under one rubric now.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was after that 6 months, then you went to jump school down in Fort Benning, and then you went back into another 6 month program as a at your individual SEAL team. But it's changed. But for all intents and purposes, it's about an 18 month program before you become a fully qualified frogman.
Wow. Now, how much of that, and this is only because it's a passion of mine that I discovered later in life, how much of that was spent with like scuba training, or is that more of a specialized where if you had an aptitude or you might be spend more time in that kind of school?
No.
Or does everybody?
Everybody goes through it. Everybody goes through it. And the way it was when I was in training, dive phase was the third phase, but I actually got a chance to go back as an instructor. And dive phase is phase 2 of training. You go through the initial first phase, which is really just trying to weed people out and basic conditioning, where you just that's where Hell Week takes place. And it's the stuff you see all the publicity of. Guys running around with logs, boats on their heads and things like that. And that's really that's what first phase is. Second phase is where you get into a little more technical training. And that's all dive phase, where you learn how to scuba dive just like you would with typical scuba type gear. And then you learn how to dive the 100% oxygen closed circuit rig, which doesn't give off any bubbles. And then from there, third phase is land warfare phase. And that's where you learn a lot about weapons and demolitions and tactics and things of that nature. And again, it's changed a lot since I went through, 30 years plus ago, but it's still, that's the one thing that was always a great attribute that happened in SEAL training is it is still relatively standardized. They get more technical now because the tactics have changed, the equipment has changed, the technology's changed. But at the core, it's still very similar because the thought process there was it was developed, the Hell Week and the things that took place in a lot of the earlier parts of training were really from the guys from World War II in Korea, the original NCDUs, the Naval Combat Demolition Unit, the UDT, underwater demolition teams. Those guys really set the training program out. So, the the beauty of it is a guy that went through in 1986 or 87, like me, could still go out and operate with a guy who went through in the year 2000. And there would be that standardization, not just because we went through the same training, but we had that trust for each other. Hey, this guy just went through the same knuckle dragon program that I went through. I could trust him.
Right.
And, there was that standardization that created that bond of toughness that everybody kind of drew from.
All right, so you spent about 18 months getting sort of prepared for whatever you might be called upon to do in terms of an active situation. What are you allowed to kind of let us know? What were some of the things that you ended up being deployed to maybe stop or prevent or recover? I know a lot of times you're used for hostages, a lot of times you're used for incursions. So,
yeah, SEALs are kind of, especially during that time, there was no like declared wartime, but
right.
So the missions were few, far between. It's kind of, my first deployment was kind of a no notice thing. It was actually 2 days after my first child was born, and got a notice that, and I was in the hospital room, got a notice that, hey, we got to go. And a couple of days later, we're on a plane. We flew over to the Middle East, and flew over to Sicily, and we rendezvoused with a submarine there. And then we ultimately went and did an operation in Beirut. And again, I don't want to act like, oh well, I'm just so cool, I can't talk about that. That's classified. I think that a lot of times talking about this stuff in any kind of setting kind of diminishes what's going on right now with a lot of these SEALs. And I just, I know there are a lot of guys that are out there making a living talking about their exploits, and quite frankly, mine aren't really all that doggone interesting and dramatic. But I did get a chance to go over that first deployment then. And then you mentioned, Alan, about being involved, during the time of the first Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Got the opportunity to go over there and participate in that. And that really wasn't a real intense special operations type war. It was more of the traditional, Norman Schwarzkopf, air war, tank war, that kind of stuff. There was special operations missions, especially from us being an East Coast team. We were kind of relegated to being in the Red Sea, where we did a lot of shipboarding, groups that were trying to run the embargo and go up into Jordan. And so we were really there for embargo enforcement, which is really not all that sexy, but, it is what it is. And it was fun. I got a chance to, this is a pretty cool story, especially being an Alabama football player. We, one other teammate of mine and I, we went and we got detached to a Coast Guard law enforcement detachment. And we were wearing Coast Guard uniforms and, just kind of acting like we were with the Coast Guard, because we had the opportunity, the two of us got a chance to go and board every single ship, friendly, whomever. It was mostly friendly ships. We just got a chance to go on board and, take pictures, kind of put together like a little dossier on every type of commercial vessel that was going in and out of the Gulf of Aqaba. And there was an American ship one day that we boarded that was going to be going up into Aqaba. And I get there and my teammate and I go in and we go to the captain's stateroom, and he's got this big Auburn flag behind his deck. And he's this Auburn guy. And so they told him, that we were SEALs. And I was like, oh man, this guy's an Auburn guy. He's going to hate me. So we got the opportunity to go in and even go further. I don't want to say undercover, but it is kind of what it was. We got a chance to put on civilian clothes and go in after the law enforcement, the Coast Guard had left. We stayed on board the boat, and we got to go into Aqaba, Jordan, and kind of get an idea, kind of gather some intelligence on what was there in Aqaba. And we saw the, Iraqi soldiers in their Jeeps and their heavy weaponry and all that kind of moving in and out, just because this was their one place that things were coming through and they could take it on into Iraq despite the embargo. So that was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And And another time on that same duty that we had, this was, pre dissolving of the Soviet Union. And, the wall was still up, and the Berlin Wall and all that. So same teammate now, we get the chance, we're going to board a Russian ship. And so, it wasn't like we'd go on board guns blazing or anything like that. We're just going on and announcing ourselves, and the Coast Guard doing all their work. And then myself and the other SEAL, we kind of go around and look around. We were sitting back on the fantail after we'd kind of gone and scoped out and drawn all the pictures. And this guy leads out of the captain's stateroom, and he kind of waves for us to come visit him. And then we were kind of looking around like, what? And then he got a bottle of wine. We've been at sea for a while. He sticks out a bottle of wine. He's like, come on up. So we went up, and myself and this other guy, I won't say his name, but we sat down at the captain's table in this Russian ship and drank wine with the Russians while we were during the first Gulf War. So it was pretty cool.
Wow, that's crazy.
Moment
that's
to
amazing.
Sit around, have and it was this heavy, wine. It didn't taste good, but it had this heavy sediment in it. And we were learning all these little Russian toasts and phrases. And it was a really fun time, and, who knew that at that stage, I guess this was 90 still. And then just, a little over a year later, the Soviet Union really started to dissolve. And I got another opportunity during the first Gulf War to learn what it was like to be in a helicopter crash. So we were going out on an op one night to board a ship, and our helicopter lost an engine, and we ultimately crashed. And so, and I ask you if you ever crashed in a helicopter, I can always say, yeah, I did.
And walked away. That's the lucky part. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. It was pretty crazy.
So we may be the only podcast in the world that has had two guests who are in military helicopter crashes.
Dang.
Yeah. So
and survive.
Don't have any military guys that haven't been in one yet, because
that's our litmus test. No. Have you been in a helicopter crash?
Wow, yeah, pretty cool.
Well, but before we move outside of the leaving the SEALs, which I want to kind of get a sense of how that went down. Did you have a particular specialty? Were you considered a general, kind of a?
Well, I was an officer, so
okay.
Officers know just enough to be dangerous. We in the SEAL community, you really put a lot of the emphasis that it's great for business too, to understand that that no matter who you are, you have value in the team, and that's one thing that I really learned from being a SEAL is. You have guys, you have some SEALs that one of my best friends had a degree in molecular biology from a small liberal arts school in Pennsylvania. And, he was brilliant. And then another guy may have, had a GED and worked on cars. That might've been his education. So, but everybody's opinion and everybody's expertise really mattered in the team, and we valued that. So, I having a specialty per se, I was just kind of the trying to be maybe the leader and the voice of reason, where we had other guys that were specializing in weapons or demolitions or diving or whatnot. And you just kind of have to know enough about everything so you're not getting yourself in trouble.
Well, in that role, then you really did learn how to become a good manager, because that's really what you're doing.
Definitely.
You're managing the team,
and I think that's helped me in the business I'm in now. It helps you be able to communicate and be able to manage people and be able to understand what you do.
And there's a big piece of knowing what you need on your team to be effective, and then how to motivate those people, because what might motivate one person is different than somebody else. But you got to all work together. That's
true, and I think hiring people. Further, people that are looking to hire people, I should say, looking at a military person, really, you know what you're getting going in generally.
Yeah.
You're generally getting somebody who has a good idea of how to crisis manage. You get generally a good idea of somebody who knows what it's like to have discipline and be under duress, and then to value the opinions and the thoughts of the rest of the team. It's that's probably my main takeaway from the military.
All right. So what led to you retiring, getting the discharge from the Navy and moving back into the civilian world?
Well, it's kind of crazy. You guys saw my bio. I had 3 children. I'm married to somebody different at the time, but I just really didn't see myself staying in because you spend a lot of time away from families. And
yeah.
And believe it or not, while I was an instructor out in San Diego, I started getting interested in doing in theater, and I acted in a couple plays. People saw that. It was all with the intention that I really wanted to try to do this professionally. And I was really fortunate. I got a lot of parts right away, even while I was still in the Navy, and had an opportunity to work, quite a bit, even while I was on shore duty in the Navy. And then from there, transition. And when I got out of the Navy, I worked on a couple TV series and had, got some parts in some major motion pictures and worked pretty steadily for while I was out of the Navy for about 4 years. And then from that point, I went from, I did it pretty much up until 9/11. And at 9/11 is when everybody just the whole movie industry really just kind of shut down. And so I didn't really get involved much. And so I said, there's got to be something better than this. But acting was a tough gig. It was a very tough gig.
It was definitely cutthroat too.
Yes,
and limited roles. But for those folks, because we are entertainment somewhat in our podcast content, what were some of the shows and the movies that you were in?
I did a TV show called 18 Wheels of Justice, which it was great. And it was Billy D. Williams was one of the stars.
I thought that was Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams, man. How cool is that? And then I worked on a show that was a series of 2-hour movies with Hulk Hogan and Carl Weathers. It was called Shadow Warriors. And that was a lot of fun. And it was kind of like basically being a SEAL, but, make believe.
Right.
Was that the one where he had a boat? Hulk Hogan had a boat?
No, that was Thunder in Paradise.
Oh, that's right.
You really need to review some of these movies that is on I know you said that you do things that are hard to turn off, but really bad. I was in some of those. I was in a movie one time with Rob Lowe. It was right before he got the West Wing, so it was before his popularity was really high, and it was called Escape Under Pressure, and it was really, really bad. It was easily the worst thing I ever did.
I remember that. I remember not seeing that.
I played some German terrorist. It was really stupid. But I did get a chance to do a couple things that were really good. I got to be in the movie We Were Soldiers.
Yeah, one of my favorite war movies.
With Mel Gibson, huh?
Yeah, it was a really good movie. It was a really important movie. I'd read that book when I was in the Navy. It was really good. And I was in another movie called The Hunted with Benicio del Toro, Tommy Lee Jones. It's a really good movie too. It's pretty cool. Connie Nielsen, who was in Gladiator, is in that. And I got a pretty neat little vignette in there. It's kind of cool. And it's fun to watch. And then, here's another one that everybody in the universe has seen, I think, is The Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the very first one, not, one of the many sequels, but the first Fast and the Furious, the very first scene in the movie, and everybody's seen it, the very first scene in the movie where they do this, they rob this 18-wheeler that's underway, and
yes,
big fight, and the guy shoots the dart, and he comes in. I was the truck driver in that scene, so it was more of a stunt role. But if you watch it, you'll see me. And
cool.
It's everybody. All my kids, especially. I mean, all their friends. Like, oh yeah, he was in the Fast and Furious. Even though I didn't have any lines, and it was the least I ever did in a movie. But I still get residual checks for all these shows. And
that's awesome.
I've got a check. I swear to you, not exaggerating. I got a check the other day for an episode of the Ellen Show, Ellen DeGeneres, their TV show she had on ABC.
Yeah,
I got a check the other day for $1 1 cent. I kid you not. I still get them. And I'll open one up. Like the other day, I got another one for like $8, and I got another one for 1 cent. You never know. You might get one for $50. You might get one for 2 cents. You never know.
So how much did your agent get out of that 1 cent check?
What's that?
How much did your agent get out of that 1 cent check?
Oh, well, hey, now I don't have, I'm out of that. Technically, they would get 1/10 of a cent. So,
Right.
yeah.
So what did you do in We Were Soldiers? What was your part there?
There was a scene where I played the part of a guy named Staff Sergeant Hafner, and and I was in a few scenes, but one scene was where they were under fire from the Vietnamese, and they were shooting the mortars. The mortars were overheating because it was hot, and they were shooting so many rounds. And so this is a true story, what actually happened in the actual battle. But the mortars overheated, and they were out of water, so they had to piss on the mortar tubes. And so if you watch the movie, that's me with my team of guys, and Mel comes over and he goes, "Hey, all right, let's piss on them." So we pissed on the mortar tubes, and it was a little moment of levity in the middle of this thing. So that's what I did.
So did you kind of feel like shooting that scene? Yeah, this is a pretty military scene.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But it was fun, because there were so many guys in that movie. I mean, like John Hamm. It was one of the first things John Hamm had ever done.
Wow.
The guy, Ryan Hurst, that was real big in Remember the Titans, Gary Bertier and Remember the Titans. This was before Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans just came out like that year. And, of course, Sam Elliott, man, he's the coolest guy in the room.
He's great.
There were a lot of really good people in that movie. A lot of young actors that went on to become, had big, but that was one of their first big parts.
Very cool. Well, that lasted, you said, about 4 years till about 9/11, and then you made another career shift.
Yeah, and again, this is, like I said, this is all, at the time, it just was a really cool series of stories, but I had a friend just through the SEAL community this is when I was really looking for something else to do, because I just didn't think I could continue to make a living as an actor with a family. And so this one particular friend of mine was living up in Seattle. He was working for the Bill and Melinda Gates family. And they had a security team of a handful of special operators. And they had an opening. So I went up and interviewed, and I got the job. So I worked for them for a couple of years. And all the while, my kids were in Seattle, and I just didn't really know if I wanted to continue to live in Seattle for the rest of my life. I kind of thought maybe at some point I wanted to migrate back to the Southeast. And I had made close friends, believe it or not, while I was in the Navy with Bruce Springsteen, and the guy that was his head of security was a former underwater demolition team guy in the Navy. He got to be friends. I went to a show. We went to a show in London while I was stationed over in Europe, and got over there and told my guys on my team, I said, we're going to meet this guy while we're here. We're going to get backstage passes. Stick with me. We're going to make this work. And they were like, yeah, right, sure. And I won't, the details of the story are kind of cool, but the fact of the matter was we did what I said. And I met these guys at Hard Rock Cafe. They invited us to come backstage, and got to be good friends with Springsteen, believe it or not. And so it when I was getting ready to transition away from kind of wanted to think about leaving Seattle, Bruce was on tour, and they hired, I went up and met with them up in Canada, and while they were at a tour stop, and, they hired me, and I ran the security detail for Bruce for about a year, and you got to go all over the world. And, and it was a completely different scenario working for the Gates there. It was very, we were hands off. They were sweet people. I didn't have a problem with them. And I know Bill Gates became even more famous during the whole pandemic and the vaccine, and a lot of his commentary, and a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. He was always nice to me. And Melinda was extremely nice to me. And then I went to work for Bruce, and it was more you know, you were with him all the time. You know, I spent a lot of time with Bruce, and he liked to work out. And we worked out a lot. We just went to all the shows. I probably did, 121 dates during that particular tour. We traveled, all over. Yeah, he big in Europe, and we traveled all over Europe and all over the United States. And it was really fun. But again, it was a great resume bullet. It wasn't something that I saw myself doing exclusively for the rest of my life. But,
so working on a security detail like that, for most of us, we go to a concert and we see the security guys down in front of the stage. That's not really what you were doing. What kind of stuff do y'all do when you're working on something?
I was, by running the security detail, you're dealing with everything from transportation to and from the venue. The T-shirt security is the guys that kind of are at the venue, but they're, you have the T-shirt security, you have the back of house people that, make sure that you got the right credentials to get to and from where you got to go. And then what we did is, I was literally with Bruce all the time. My room was right next to his room. And so, anything that happened during the show is pretty much the responsibility of the group at the venue. But I was, the term bodyguard, people think you're like some kind of guy that's just, poking people in the eye or punching them when they get too close. But hey, I was his bodyguard, his first line of defense for, all travel or anything that we did, in and around. So you just spend a lot of time with him, and it was a cool thing to do at the time. And then from there, moved back to Alabama and got into the other business that I'm in now. I've explained.
Which I want to get to, but I do have a question about, because you were on so many tour dates. Do you have any moment where you had to do something that maybe you just felt weird, had to get Bruce out of a situation, or a fan got too close?
Yes. I got a great story for that. We were in Boston, and it was the first time they had ever done a show at Fenway Park. And so we're in Boston, and Bruce used to love to do this thing. He called it poping, where he would wave at people, whether it was in a moving vehicle or out of a balcony or whatever. So we're in, this is pretty funny. So we're in Boston, and Fenway Park, for those of you who haven't been there, it's not that big. So I think there might have been 40,000 people at the concert, because they, have people sitting on the infield and all that. So they have about 40,000 people inside. Outside the show, there are probably 30,000 people just hanging out in the street, because you could hear everything, And so we get finished with the show, and then Bruce, we get in the van, and the way we would sit, he wasn't a limousine guy. He was vans, So Bruce would he sat in the front seat of this particular night. This is the last time we did this scenario, but he'd get in the front seat of the van, and I was sitting directly behind him. And his wife, Patty Scalfa, who's in the band, she was sitting next to me. And so we start to pull out, and literally it's like the last helo out of Saigon. There are like people just swarming the van because they're outside and they're like drunk. And so they really want to, see what Bruce is all about. So he gets out of rolls down the window in the front seat, and on the, facing, like he would be facing into the van, but he's outside of the van now, sitting on the windowsill, waving at people, poping. So I reach underneath the seat and I grab him by the belt. So if he falls out, somebody pulls him out accidentally, intentionally, whatever, I got to go. I'm going with him. Mm-hmm. The van didn't have the sliding door. It had to kind of open the door that opens out,
Right.
And there are people just swarming him. We're going about 10 miles an hour. And there are literally all of these 30,000 people are kind of descending on this van. And so I got the van door kind of open, because I'm like, if he falls out, I got to go. I got to get out and go do this myself. And so I opened the door up a little bit, and it hits this woman, kind of hits her pretty hard, and it knocks her back. And I'm thinking, well, damn, this worked pretty good. We're kind of clearing it. I may try this a few more times to clear some of these people off this vehicle. So I kind of use it like it's a forearm pad on a football game, So I kind of pow, pow. I hit a couple people while I'm holding him, and all the while Patty's yelling, "Bruce, get back in the van, get back in the van." I pull him in, and he's kind of realizing this is freaking pretty dangerous. So I pull him in, and I'm literally like eyeball to eyeball with him, and I said, "Don't ever do that again." He's like, "Oh, okay." So he sits down, and we get in there, and so all right, cool. And his wife's yelling at him and all that. So we're getting to the. So we get to the airport. We fly out of these little FBO private. So we get to the airport, and there are blue lights flashing everywhere. And they came. The Boston police are there, and they're talking to the tour manager because they want to arrest me for assault with a deadly weapon. Because people with this dang vandal. And so anyway, they agreed to let me get on the plane without being arrested. And we flew back to New Jersey. And from there, they were contemplating whether they were going to have to extradite me from New Jersey, go to Boston so I could get charged with assaulting these people. And ultimately, I guess they worked it out. So I had to go back to Boston to do that. But to this day, I'm not a big fan of people of Boston because, hey, I had to do what I had to do to protect my principal. But at the same time, if you're charging a moving van in a 30,000 in a huge crowd, you might get hurt. So, don't you have to accept that risk.
I love you telling me that you look eye to eye with the boss and you were actually the boss at that moment.
Yes. But that's the thing about that business. You don't want to talk much because when your voice is kind of like training an animal, really, for lack of a better term. When you talk to him, you want to make sure that it's important. So I didn't just sit around and shoot the breeze with this guy, but when it came time to tell him something, it was important. So we had a good relationship, and that at that moment, I think it kind of cemented things because he was, he came back and apologized to me afterwards, and I'm like, hey, it's fine, it's all good, no big deal.
Right. Well, I mean, they're not thinking that way. They're the celebrity, they're the star, they're the talent. They're not thinking of the things
what could
you
happen
have to
him,
keep.
Yeah. Everybody.
And he's not the kind of guy who's aloof and doesn't want to be face to face with the crowd. He likes his fans.
Right.
And but he doesn't understand the danger of liking his fans sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
This was in 2003. And this is really before he became a political figure. He was starting to talk a lot. This was at the beginning of the George Bush. I guess he ran against John Kerry that time, and he was outspoken about that to a degree. Mm-hmm. But and it was funny because I remember the last night of the tour, we were in New York, and we were sitting at a bar, and this is after you kind of let your hair down, and I knew I wasn't going to be working for him anymore, and we were talking and name drop. We were sitting at a bar, and Sting was at the bar with me and Bruce. That was pretty cool. We were doing shots.
That's pretty awesome.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And, he just said, hey, this is the way I grew up, listening to Bob Dylan and really trying to be this voice, and this is just kind of how I am. It's not really, I think he's kind of gotten more political, and I haven't shared anything about my political views. I'm pretty dead center in a lot of things, but I think Bruce really felt that he had this voice, and that really kind of spawned from the early days of, the 60s and the Byrds and Bob Dylan and people like that. That's just kind of the mantle that he wore from that.
Well, and I think a lot of the artists, thanks to social media, one way or the other, however you feel about it, they realized that they could become an influence. I mean, it's all about being an influencer. And when you're already a celebrity, you already carry some weight, then you can use that platform for something other than your music. And I think people are using it for that, for whatever reason. I'm not going to justify whether I think it's right or wrong, because that's you do what you want. It's a free country. At least it's still, as far as I can tell. But I'm trying to keep it that way.
Right.
So you stop that, and now you're what's this next move? Like, where are you right now? Where did this lead you? That you said about 40 minutes ago that all of my experiences led me to the job I have today?
Well, I mentioned it, and we're very tight-lipped. I'll tell you, because I've worked for a huge company, but where I am now, I think there's a lot of community involvement. There's a lot of leadership with different municipal leaders, but for better or worse, we've kind of become known in this community because we've had some violent crime take place in our property. And I think it's really a shame because, there are a lot of people that we've kind of become desensitized in our country because there's a lot of violent crime. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, a lot of it is kind of accepted. A lot of it is kind of apologized for, maybe not endorsed or condoned, but it's just kind of become something that just is, And but we've really had a rough time. We had an officer involved shooting that led to a homicide. It was basically some gang activity per se that happened back in 2018, and it got a lot of attention. It got a lot of attention globally. It got a lot of attention from the Daily Show, from CBS News, from New York Times. And a lot of stuff that was written and said was just flat out not true, and was based in a narrative. And so, in being my position, it enabled me to be able to kind of be that person who's had to communicate under duress. And I think briefing some of the admirals during before operations, and having to tell them exactly how the mission was going to go, and kind of being responsible for people in that arena really led me to this. And I didn't really anticipate that, because you never anticipate having to have crimes. And we had a homicide. We had 3 homicides and 7 people wounded in a period of a 2.5, not even 2.5 year period. And
wow.
Not that you ever get good at that, but being able to kind of deal with things in that arena, being in some pressure situations where you have to communicate to a number of different entities. It really led, I think that it's without a doubt, the things that I did while I was in the SEALs, it enabled me to be better at that, and in the solutions we've turned toward canines that can detect firearms, and a lot of that, fortunately, I had a hand in, getting that capability onto our property. So, a number of things that, I don't want to go too far into it because somebody in my company might hear this and go, "Hey, what are you doing talking about that?"
Right, yeah, I don't want you getting anything
talking out of
proprietary.
school. I'm just telling you that there have been a lot of really adverse things that have happened, and I feel privileged to be able to kind of be that sheepdog who kind of oversees the people within my property and my team and my company, and to be somebody who's kind of been out there, like we started talking about the pointy end of the spear, to have been there, and helps me to be more just see things and be more balanced with it, and be able to just kind of look at things and make some rational decisions under some difficult circumstances.
So as we wind down the interview piece, and we're going to continue on with the rest of the segments we have planned, if you had the crystal ball, where do you kind of, and who knows, with your background, you might be an author on a circuit, next thing I know, where do you see yourself in the next 5 or 6 years?
I'll be honest with you. I love where I am now. And I think just continuing to be good at what I do now is what I want to do. I'll be 60 years old this year, and, but, I try to stay in physical shape, like I was 30, and I still do that. Sometimes it leads me to having to go get surgeries because I probably, my body's not really able to do it, but I just think it is. So I just do it anyway. But, I want to continue to be, valuable asset for my company, number one, but also, you know, for my family, you know, being that kind of that patriarch in our family, because, you know, that's, you know, kind of everything just kind of comes, seeing our conversations all coming back full circle, but just being that guy that's able to kind of help his family navigate through some difficult waters, and, you know, grandchildren. And I'm not by any means wanting to be this guy who's just thrown in the towel and just wants to be, you know, rest on all the old stuff, just continue to evolve. But, you know, just being an asset, you know, being a solid beacon to people around me, you know.
That's awesome. I have loved hearing you. I think you have talked more in your guest segment than anybody we've talked to in a while.
All right.
And I don't think we've scratched all of your stories. I think we just got a great overview, and it's been our privilege to hear your evolution, starting from your days as a football player through Alabama, through the Navy SEALs, and then all of the exciting world of entertainment and to what you do now. So I want to say thank you for joining us for that, you know, story part. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Man, it's fun. It's been my pleasure. And I also want to thank you, Alan, because before I actually came on, I noticed that you were enjoying an adult beverage. So
yep.
I have a fridge right around the corner, and I'm in my little office in my basement. So I went in and got that too. So maybe that made the stories a little bit better.
Yeah, I saw you went and got a Guinness. I was like, yeah, that's my kind of beer.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, and we definitely wanted to make sure you had more time than Randy to talk. So,
oh yeah, I'll have to go there.
Well, before we actually move on to then the movie segment, if someone who's listening to the episode, do you have social media or anything where if somebody's interested in talking to you or reaching out to you, do you do any of that?
Well, I'll be totally honest with you. No. And it's not because I'm an old fogey. I'll tell you why. It's a lot of it is because of some of the things that I told you happened recently in my business life. So I just kind of thought, let's keep as low a footprint as we possibly can. And so
makes sense.
Yeah. I might voyeuristically check a few things out just to kind of see what's going on. But no, I bounced off of that. For a while we were doing a lot of things, but no, I'm kind of ungoogleable right now in terms of that stuff. So how about that?
You know, I think we're going to get a point in the future where people are going to say, I need to share less.
Yeah.
So
I hope
Dave
so.
Chappelle. Another thing is, like Dave Chappelle says, you know, you never hear anybody say, I wish I had a camera. It's kind of like the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
You know, everybody's got a camera all the time. So it's the same thing.
All right. Well, let's move to our listener lounge selected horrible movie of the week, a segment we like to call
God, what is this? Stop it! I gotta get me out of this hell!
Yeah, Mike, I think this is going to be one of those times that you thank God that you never ended up in this movie. This week, our listeners voted for Six-Headed Shark Attack, which is an hour and 26-minute nightmare. The write-up on IMDb says, attendees of a marriage boot camp on a remote island have to fight a six-headed shark that attacks the beach.
Do you mind telling me what this is all about, mister?
That's about it. That is, it gets no deeper than that. The science is horrible.
I am so happy that one won the poll because it was trailing for a while, and I voted for that one.
It was, and you know, both of my daughters voted for it. They were like, "We want to torture Dad with this," so I got stuck with this piece of garbage. You know, here's the odd thing about this: the acting is not great. I mean, maybe C-. The writing is maybe a D, but there's actually some logic to it. I mean, the storyline is cogent. You can kind of follow what's going on. I don't know that you always want to, but you can actually follow it. The CGI is not bad, and I'm trying to find all the good points here. The rest of it is just horrible. Now, here's the funny thing. When you go and look at what people have written about this thing, it's really funny because it says there's no nudity, no sex, and no cussing, so you can let your kids watch it.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
but it's like grotesque horror, blood spray and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So, and then you have this 6-headed shark, and they even go into the science of where the 6-headed shark came from. At one point, they blow one of the shark's heads off, a la Jaws 1 when they blow it up with an oxygen tank.
Uh-huh.
And the head grows back.
Oh.
So, setting the stage for 7-headed shark attack, possibly. There are actually, this is the 6th in a series. It started, the 5th in the series. It started with 2-headed shark attack, there's 3-headed shark attack, and so forth. There are 2 great lines that I wanted to jot down. When they're having the marriage counseling and therapy, the guy who runs the place, who's more, he hauls people around and stuff, he's talking to his wife, who's the therapist. He says, "This is therapy through action. Your therapy, and I am action."
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
That may be the best line.
Well, now.
Later in that same conversation, she tells him to be careful because there is going to be weather.
Have fun storming the castle.
I think there's always weather, but, and the weather happened to be a tornado in the hugest storm they'd ever had, quote, hugest storm. And, so you're kind of thinking, oh, well, the shark's going to come ashore because it's going to get pitched up there by the tornado. No, this shark can use 2 of his heads as legs and walk on the beach.
Oh, you're kidding.
It's, and I'm sorry for that spoiler. I should have warned you. I don't even know where else to go with this. So there are actual actors in this. The guy who plays William, who's the main character, is a guy named Brandon Arrett. And he has actually been in a lot of, he's been in several good things and actually played some pretty decent parts. He was in The Last Days of American Crime, which actually was supposed to be pretty good. He was in The Scorpion King, Book of Souls. He was in a show called Blood Drive, which is, I think, an Australian show. And several other, he was in Planet of the Sharks, so I think that might not be too great. And he was in Tremors 5. But there are several other things like District 9 and things like that that are actual, real production movies. So he's not a terrible actor, but this is a bad part. But I will say that the production value of this is a whole lot better than anything I've seen so far this year. So
do you think it was trying to compete with the whole, what was the Sharknado?
And the whole B-movie shark thing.
They almost are intentionally being bad, but they've got a budget to put behind the CGI.
I don't know that it was that self-aware. I think, that they were trying to make a movie with a plot and stuff, and it just didn't come off that well.
That's I like and stuff.
Yeah. Again, it didn't Gone with the Wind. It's 6-headed shark attack. And now, granted, it's very honest. It has 6 heads, and it is a shark, and it does
attack. It's a true story.
It's not like Killer Couch, or that was actually a chair. And so there are some good things. I would actually say this is watchable. It's not going to be your favorite movie, but as bad movies go, this one is watchable. There is some serious overacting on the part of a couple of the actors, but overall, I think it is what it is, and it is okay. It's, as far as bad movies go, it's probably one of the better ones.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So, if you're going to torture me with one, you could have done a lot worse.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad it ended up being better than expected. Of course, you've had a bar set fairly low for the last couple of weeks. So
yeah, Killer Couch was a rough one. I keep thinking back. That's got to be our worst so far. So I'm not going to be able to rate these as, worst to not worst, but that one's probably, that's the low bar. And this one's slightly above that bar.
Wow. Well, I think you had said Velocipaster was pretty bad.
Yeah, Velocipaster's pretty bad. It's yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and think about really which one of these is the worst.
You're going to probably have to start keeping some notes and starting to come up with a scale. I know you came up with the 5 out of 5 on the bad movie scale, but that's not really going to be helpful when we start ranking these.
Yeah, it's not at all. This would get my 5. This would be a 5 on that bad movie scale because it is, like I said, it is watchable. You don't really care about the characters. It's more just kind of blood and gore, but it's actually not the worst movie I've ever seen.
Well, is that really saying anything based on what you've seen?
Well, I've seen the prequels to Star Wars, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Point taken. All right. Well, let's go ahead. We'll move along to our news segment, a segment we like to call
It's no bullshit.
Well, this might be. So, Alan, you're an animal lover, right?
I do like animals a lot.
Well, MontanaRightNow.com is going to piss you off.
Uh-oh.
So, Shelter mixes exercise with animals through cat yoga.
Huh?
Great Falls, Montana. On its own, yoga brings plenty of health benefits, like soothing anxiety. However, Saturday morning cat yoga in the Macklin Cameron Animal Adoption Center gave one group more positive energy during their session.
Oh, dear Lord, I'm already groaning.
This is terrible. Exploring at their own pace, 3 furry felines took turns joining people, helping them relax as they went through stretches, bends, and meditation. I think that the cats were a little bit nervous, but I think that's normal, said Catherine Mertz, one participant, who says she's new to taking yoga lessons. Center staff tell Montana Right Now that this approach offers a new way of connecting with their kittens in hopes of finding them forever homes. So these are like stray cats that they've brought in to hang out with people doing yoga. It's one thing.
Wait. Okay. So is this like trying to be like the goat yoga thing where they put the little pygmy goats on your back and stuff, or?
Well, this one they just throw a box of feral stray cats in the room with people doing yoga, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you take one of these home with you?"
What's wrong with that one?
I don't like what could go wrong. I mean, so here, folks. Here's your soothing box of stray cats to help you with your yoga. Why don't you relax and enjoy?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Right. Like, how could this possibly be a problem? It's God. It's
Can't even control.
I'm sorry,
yourself.
you're gonna have to edit this because I can't stop laughing. It's one thing to know you just walk in and window shop a little bit, but it's another to be able to sit down and interact with the kitties, said Misha John. During her time, Mert says that she had an enjoyable challenge, balancing herself while playing with the cats. I held out a toy and it came over and played. It was kind of cool because I had to learn how to rebalance my body to still entertain the cat over here. While they kept things on a small scale as a health measure against the coronavirus, the shelter is counting on eventually expanding and making this a regular event down the road. I can imagine that we'll probably think about doing this on a monthly basis just to begin, said John. For now, MCAA's hosting the Kira Furcho Art Show and the Celtic Cowboy from March 18th through 20th with a 10% sale. I don't know how that is connected to cat yoga, but it's in the article.
It's no bullshit.
So if you have a desire to play with homeless cats while you do yoga, head to Montana and check in Great Falls and have your rabies shot, I guess.
Oh my God, that is hysterical. All right, well, since we're on the animal side of things, let me go ahead and dive into this story. Well, it's never worth buying miracle cures. You just never know what it is or where it came from. Now, black markets are a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, they can help people living under oppressive regimes to buy even the most basic necessities of life. On the other hand, they are often trade routes for illegal or otherwise shady goods. That also means that many times the thing you get is not what you thought you were buying. And that's the case here. In India, and potentially elsewhere in Asia, severed penises of endangered lizards are being sold as mystical roots from the Himalayas.
What?
The root is known as Hatha Jodi, which roughly translates to a pair of palms, which is what you would maybe use on your penis were it not lopped off. The name stems from the appearance of two-pronged lizard penis. Unscrupulous traders, mostly would-be astrologers, sell the penis root for $14 to $40 a pop. Their target market are superstitious locals who often anoint their purchase with vermilion and then keep it on their home altar.
Oy.
Now, they think it's a plant root. What they're being sold is a penis from a lizard. Just think about that on the mantle of your temple at home.
Oh my
now,
gosh.
Unfortunately for the monitor lizards, their penises get unwanted attention from more than just the magic trinket salesman. According to Jose Luis, head of Wildlife Crime Control Division of Wildlife Trust India, there is a whole poaching industry centered around the endangered lizards. What penises aren't sold off as withered roots are then instead peddled off as an aphrodisiac. The poachers either boil them like any other meat or dry them and grind them into powder for later consumption. According to this, the lizard meat is a sought-after delicacy. Many restaurants along Indian highways reportedly purchase this illegal bush meat at a whopping $20 per pound. It's so popular that when restaurants can't get the actual meat, they resort to using substitutes. An anonymous informant in the lizard trade told Vice that some eateries sell cooked cattle tails as lizard penises. Indian authorities have tried cracking down on the lizard trade. After all, they enjoy the same protection laws as elephants, tigers, and more famous endangered animals. Louise himself carried out an investigation into the illegal reptile trade. As a result of his work, Indian Wildlife Control confiscated more than 300 lizard penises across 14 different raids. There you go. Now, it does end with sort of a punny line that just says, law enforcement officials believe that the sellers have gone underground of late, but there are clear indications that the penises are in much shorter supply.
It's no bullshit.
Not as funny as feral cats being unleashed in a yoga studio, but I thought it was a fun story nonetheless.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 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 Now, can you imagine having that on your mantelpiece and having the local zoologist come by for your Christmas party?
Right. Just think about the story. Like, how do you like this this mystical root? Like, that's not a root. That's a dick. That's what?
That would be a lizard penis. Well, I have some good news, Alan.
Okay.
You're going to be very relieved to hear this. Rambo found not guilty of attempted murder.
Holy cow.
Well, that's good. I saw these movies. I thought he did a lot of carnage.
Well, unfortunately, it's not John Rambo.
Oh, a different Rambo. Oh, you mean
this
Rambo?
This is from Idaho's own CDApress.com. I'm not going to try to pronounce this. Well, I am going to try to pronounce this town, but I'm not going to get it right. Cordialone. A jury has found accused 4th of July shooter Tyler Rambo not guilty of second-degree attempted murder. Rambo, 20, was also found not guilty of aggravated assault. He was found guilty of 3 counts of aggravated assault on a peace officer. Sounds a lot like our other Rambo. Prosecutors said Rambo, who was 18 at the time, attempted to shoot a man during a physical altercation and pointed the gun at someone else before running from law enforcement. Police said Rambo fired a gun at them after he was hit with a taser. After Rambo's gun went off, police shot him 14 times.
Wow.
The events that led up to the incident began a week earlier when Rambo met a Mr. Anderson at a house party on the north side of Spokane. The pair reportedly had a physical fight at the party. Anderson said he won. Prosecutors said Rambo had revenge on his mind when he brought a loaded revolver and extra ammunition with him when he went downtown with his family for the 4th of July celebration. Defense attorney Rick Bauman said Rambo carried the gun as a precaution, like many gun owners who carry concealed weapons, not because he intended to harm anyone. When Rambo came across Anderson near Independence Point, a fight broke out. Rambo threw the first punch, he said. Then someone hit him in the face, and someone else hit the back of his knee, he said, causing him to fall. Curled up on the ground, Rambo said he feared for his life. Punches and kicks land all over his body, he said, and his head was bouncing off the concrete. 6 witnesses testified that they saw multiple people kicking and punching Rambo while he was on the ground. I was going to lose consciousness, and I wasn't going to wake up, Rambo said in court Monday. I thought I was going to die. He said he pulled the gun and fired into the air in order to stop the attack. Rambo was charged with second-degree attempted murder for allegedly shooting at Anderson and with aggravated assault for allegedly pointing the gun at Anderson's girlfriend. Jurors found Rambo not guilty of both charges.
It's no bullshit.
Wow.
So the Rambo family is not to be messed with.
Wow, I'm just imagining he got shot 14 times and lived to tell.
Yeah, another article said he lost his leg, but he did survive. I mean, who gets shot 14 times?
That's nuts. That's a lot of nuts.
That's a lot of nuts!
All right, well, I've got a story to wrap up this segment. Here's the headline. You know the fast food chain Panda Express, right? You've heard that?
I'm familiar.
Okay, Panda Express charged for bizarre sexual cult-like team building seminar.
Oh, boy.
Yep, there is no promotion worth going through what this particular lawsuit alleges. Now, I'll skip around to try to, it's a 3-page article, but I didn't know what to cut, so I'll just kind of wing through this. Now, there's probably not a single person on this planet that genuinely enjoys corporate team building exercises. We're ready to bet even the speakers aren't even into it. But we'd take your regular, vapid team spirit seminar any day over what's allegedly going on at Panda Express. A new lawsuit filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court describes a cult-like act, describes cult-like acts bordering on sexual harassment. It was filed by a 23-year-old employee who was rising in the company, and they had identified her for a promotion and said that she would need to go to this training seminar. Well, according to the lawsuit, the employee in question began working at Panda Express in 2016. She was eager to move up and so was asked to go to this event. So she eagerly decided to go and attend. The employee's attorney, Oscar Ramirez, told Pasadena Star News that 20 to 50 Panda Express employees attended this particular seminar. The meeting was held at a warehouse in eastern Los Angeles. That should be your first warning sign. As they arrived, each attendee was required to present their Panda Express employee identity number. Then they received their Panda-branded introductory materials, and the seminar got underway. So what happened first? Right off the bat, they were taken into a room. Organizers left them alone, saying, "No one say a word. Shut up, talk to nobody," and then left. They left them for over an hour.
What?
The hall's windows and doors were covered in black cloth. There was no clock, no one speaking, no one there, no phones, nobody could move. It was basically like they were in detention. Suddenly, a man burst into the room and started screaming in Spanish at everyone present. He told the attendees they were nothing, and you didn't matter, since they were doing nothing, both collectively and individually. Mind you, this wasn't some deranged madman that slipped into the building. He was a live seminar's employee who was instructed to act that way. Basically, the atmosphere was to create a really high-tension filled environment with someone screaming at them after they had been left alone and in silence for over an hour. Well, the strange screaming exercise may sound bad enough, but that was only day one of the seminar. During the next day, the plaintiff alleges that organizers forced her to strip down to her underwear in front of everyone.
What?
This was supposedly a trust-building exercise, but the training staff sure did their best to not make it seem like that. The plaintiff, stripped almost naked in front of strangers and coworkers, was extremely uncomfortable but pressed on because she knew it was her only chance for a promotion. To top off the exercise, the staff told the employees to then stand up and yell about their inner struggles until everyone else attending the seminar believed them. This didn't quite fit right to some of the attendees. One man, who also stripped down to his underwear, broke down in tears at this point. Try and cheer him up, the training staff instructed the plaintiff to take the man into the middle of the room and then hug it out in their underwear.
No.
As the supposed training event went on, the lawsuit says things got weirder and more cultish. A live seminar staff proceeded to dim the lights. Plaintiff and the other attendees were instructed to stand up, close their eyes, pretending that a light from above would come down and take away all of their negative energy. They pretended that a hole opening up in the ground would swallow all of their negative energy. While that was happening, one of the Alive seminar staff had a cell phone with the light on, recording her in a state of undress. The whole event was strictly controlled. If anyone wanted to go to the bathroom, an Alive employee would stand behind the door the entire time. At one point, one attendee had to throw up. Not only was he chased to the bathroom by a staff member, he was only given a small trash can to throw up in, and he had to do it while everyone else watched. After the whole ordeal, the plaintiff claims Panda Express didn't give a hoot or holler about the psychological torture of its employees. Her promotion, of course, denied, and her work conditions became intolerable.
It's amazing. It's astounding. But it's no bullshit.
So this is a lawsuit underway that apparently these folks were subjected to humiliation and sexual harassment as well as degrading conditions, all for that extra badge and maybe a couple of dollars an hour to work at Panda Express.
Wow. That is pretty frightening.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, Panda Express must be a fantastic job, but
now granted, they're all franchises for the most part, so just because one owner decided to get suckered into maybe sending his employees to one particular training doesn't mean that's the whole corporation. I don't want to...
Oh, I'm not giving up my orange chicken just because of this, so don't worry, Alan.
Well, I mean, I know there's one close to you over there in Woodstock, so...
There is. It's right on my way home, and yeah, it's... hey, I mean, it's good, you know, six-headed killer shark level Chinese food. But hey, let me just give a word of advice here. If you're in a religious organization or a business or a social group or anything else that requires you to remove your clothes or throw up in front of other people, quit or leave.
You may not be in the right place.
You're moving into Jim Jones territory there, and that's not a good place to be. So, yeah, go hire a lawyer, do whatever you got to do. But when the clothes start coming off, torture starts, and public vomiting is required. Unless you're a SEAL. If you're in SEAL training, it's different. But otherwise, no. That's a big no.
Yeah, I am amazed, though, of the number of stories of people who feel like, well, I'm told I need to be here, and they're so afraid to assert their own will that they just go along with it.
Yeah, it's really scary.
All right, well, let's go on to the world of entertainment. And let's wrap this up with what we're watching, what we're reading, and what we're listening to. And Walt, I usually go to you first, but I'm going to go first on this one just to kind of mix things up. I'm going to say what we're watching.
Fire away.
I have been spending a lot of time doing two shows that I've been binging. I've gone back and I'm midway through season 1 of the original Star Trek remastered. After about episode 4 or 5, they do get better. And I got to the episode called Balance of Terror, which starred Mark Leonard, who would end up being multiple characters in multiple Star Trek stories, eventually turning into Spock's father.
Farther, yes.
And it was fantastic. It was the first sense that the Enterprise could be used in battle, that they were up against a Romulan, and you got a sense of two captains all trying to, you know how our guest talked about We Were Soldiers, and how that whole movie is about one particular battle with two really skilled commanders on the battlefield, and they were both playing cat and mouse with each other. Same kind of premise here. Both playing cat and mouse, who was going to make the mistake first, and it was great. So I've been thoroughly enjoying going through the original series. It is the remastered, so there is some CG work for the Enterprise, but they're keeping much. It doesn't. Let's put it this way. I don't feel like the CG is interfering with the show, and I've been enjoying it a lot. So that's cool.
I would agree with you. I've watched a good number of them. I was just rewatching City on the Edge of Forever, and there's another one that I watched the other day. And I agree with you. I think that's the thing that I appreciate the most, is that it is not distracting from the show.
The other thing we've been binging, the wife and I, is we're still watching The Good Place. We just got into season 4. That is such a good show. My wife started making fun of me because, I don't know if it's because I'm a dad of daughters or because I have an acting background and I'm kind of in touch with my emotions, but they did this wonderful montage before one of the main characters was going to have his memory wiped again. And it was teary. I was like, oh my God. This is a great show. I know I caught a little bit of it when it was airing on television. It's such a good one to go and binge right now.
I was really surprised at how much I liked that show. I think it's one of the best network shows in a decade.
And I got to be honest with you, I'm starting to have a thing for Kristen Bell.
Oh, there's no shame in that.
I mean, I've always been attracted to not just, cute. I mean, she's not like hot, but cute women, but she's self-deprecating, can do humor, isn't afraid to be kind of quirky and say things. And when you have like the whole package of fun and spunky and entertaining, it's just like, you're just awesome. And I find myself thinking that the whole time. Look how talented she is. Look how amazing this is. I mean, I'm falling for Kristen Bell.
I hope that somebody who's more talented than me will do a video of all the crazy things that she said that she did over time. Because you know how she has those one-liners where somebody will be like, well, it's not like you were naked in the Walmart parking lot. She's like, Arizona, 1997. And she has all those really quick quips. I would love to just hear a montage of one of those after another.
It's fantastic. And I remember watching when it was airing on network television, and just the skill of the actors to say things like, holy forking shirt balls.
I know.
They're like, why am I saying forking? Why the fork can't I say fork? Wait, I can't swear here? And it's like so brilliant. And it's such a charming, just a good show. It's a great message. You fall in love with the characters. I like all of them. I mean, Ted Danson is amazing in this. So
I was going to say, Ted Danson over and over again is just an impressive actor. He is probably one of the better comic actors that has been alive in our time.
So I would heartily recommend, if someone is looking for something that they want to watch in very small, easily digestible bites, when you take the commercials out, they're only about 22 minutes apiece. Well worth binging on Netflix.
Yeah, I agree. I agree on both of those.
All right. What about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I've been watching several things, but one that I picked up this week that I think is definitely worth watching is called Murder Among the Mormons. It's a documentary. It's really well done, really well put together. And I don't know that people remember this, but in the mid-'80s, there was this kind of craze among document collectors to get all these ancient Mormon documents. Well, some of those, of course, demonstrated that maybe not all of the Mormon documents are that accurate. So somebody blew up one of the document collectors who had found a document that showed that the golden tablets were handed to Joseph Smith by a white iguana or something, instead of by this angel. Mm-hmm. And so instead of, having a hearty religious debate, they just set a bomb off in his office and killed him. So, really interesting story. Again, very well done documentary. I would check that out. And then my friend Bill yesterday was like, you have to recommend this on your show. and you have to watch it. There's a documentary called The Ripper, which is about a serial killer in London like 35 years ago, who is very similar to Jack the Ripper. So I was looking at that today. It has a great write-up, and looks like it's definitely one of my next watch things. So check that out. Murder Among the Mormons and The Ripper. Next week I'll have something a little lighter and more entertainment-oriented. I guess this has just been a dark week for some reason. I don't know.
All right. I don't have anything on the reading front, save for this particular week. I'm doing so much talk radio. I have been burying myself in the news of the day, which is talk about dark and horrifying. That's apparently all we like to print, read, or put on the news today.
Yeah, there's a lot of it going on. So,
nothing positive. Why do that? No room for growth or encouragement. Just down, down, down.
Yeah. Well, I think last week I mentioned that I was starting a book called Running with the Devil by Noel Monk.
Yeah, about Van Halen.
Van Halen. I'm about a third of the way through that, and I've had to go back to Mr. Monk a couple times with some questions, and most of my questions are, holy crap, did that really happen? And, or how did you live through this? So he's been very gracious to answer my weird questions and stuff, but it is a very readable book. When you actually sit down and start reading, I can plow through, page after page, and you don't want to stop reading because it's so entertaining. So even if you're not a Van Halen fan, it'll have something for you. But Running with the Devil by Noel Monk, great read. Definitely pick that up if you're a Van Halen fan.
All right. Anything else you're reading?
That's all I got time for right now.
For me, moving on to listening, mentioned one of the episodes that was a remastered episode on 60MW podcast about one of the guys that considers himself a music video historian and documented a lot of the backgrounds, especially of the late 70s through the MTV era into the early 90s, and had all these stories from the bands, and it was just a really cool episode to listen to. Well, they've released part 2, which was with a different interview, was episode 344 on 60MW podcast. It originally came out in March of 2014, but basically they interviewed another person. They interviewed a visual conceptualist by the name of Keith Williams. This was a guy that sometimes they would hire to say, okay, after listening to this album, which song inspired you to something visual that we should turn into a music video?
Oh.
And he would come up with the visual concepts, the ideas, how to shoot this or what it is, maybe write a couple of lines to give a synopsis, and then hand it over to a writer and a director to make it come to life. And it was great. It was a guy from Wales, and he told the story about meeting Michael Jackson, about meeting Madonna, about talking to them about ideas, about how almost all the time the ideas were ignored,
Of course.
but that for a period of time, he was being paid just enough that he would manage to survive in LA, one gig to the next. And it was such a good interview. So check out the episode number 344 of 60MW podcast it's entitled Remastered Looking at Music Videos Part 2. And it is an interview with a visual conceptualist Keith Williams.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. Those are just great guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, notwithstanding the insults they threw at you today in our chat room, but
I didn't pay attention today. I've been too busy.
I know, that's why we were insulting you. So, a couple things I want to recommend.
Well, those cheeky fuckers.
Well, my friends Stephanie and Mary Beth, who I hope are listening, recommended a podcast to me today called Gangster House. And I had kind of forgotten that they were working on this. There was a guy on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list by the name of Michael Thievis back in the late 70s and early 80s. And as I've mentioned, and as you know from the past interview, my dad was an FBI agent. So this guy on the FBI's top 10 list was living in our neighborhood with his girlfriend. And he was a pornographer and all kinds of crazy stuff he was into. And he was let out of prison or out of jail pre-trial and murdered the witness to his multiple crimes with a deer rifle not far from the Chattahoochee River here in Atlanta. and then went on the run. And he ran so far that he ran to our neighborhood like 5 miles away and hid out with his girlfriend for a long time. So I remember my dad, we drove by this house and he was like, that's where this guy on the top 10 list lives. If you see him, you come back to the house and call me immediately. And one of our neighbors actually saw him leaving the neighborhood and called 911. And so it's a crazy story, but it goes into all kinds of stuff with this guy. But Michael George Thieves was a tough guy, had a dramatic, ending to his fleeing. So Gangster House podcast is really good. And then on the Dirty Harry Minute today, which is March 15th, they released a new episode. It's the Sudden Impact audio commentary where I was a guest. And we went through all 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 9 seconds of Sudden Impact. We just hit play and talked through the movie. So mostly about the movie. Got into some rabbit trails, of course. But great old Dirty Harry shoot 'em up kind of movie. He has a 44 Magnum Auto, which is a big nightmare of a gun. But it's a great, fun Dirty Harry movie, and we have a good time breaking it down. So check that out, the Dirty Harry Minute, the March 15th episode, and it is the audio commentary on Sudden Impact.
Excellent. Well, that's going to, I think, wrap it up for us, right?
I think that wraps it up. Yeah, I think we've said everything that we can say.
Yeah, our guest had to drop. We do appreciate the fact that even though on the day after the passing of his father, he said, I'd made a commitment to you guys. I really wanted to be on it. And I do think what I said to him before we even started is maybe we can be a good distraction for an hour or so. Stick around as long as you can. And you could tell that he was enjoying the storytelling, and it was taking at least a distraction from what he was going through. But of course, thoughts, prayers to his family. Even when you're sort of expecting it, it's still never a fun experience to lose a parent.
It is not. Both of us have been there.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for us. So before we sign out, Walt, we've got the obligatory how to find us and where to engage if people are suddenly interested in being on social media with us. What are the details?
Yeah, come find us over on Facebook, facebook.com/thewilderride. As we've said before, just click the button to follow us there, and then another button's going to pop up right behind it. To join our listeners group, you'll be asked 3 generic questions about Gene Wilder and stuff like that. So put whatever answer you want to, whether it's right or wrong, and we'll know you're a human being and we'll let you in the group. No politics, no news, no nothing, just entertainment and fun. And
well,
talking
entertainment
about
news.
The podcast, and then we have every week now the horrible movie Walt is going to be subjected to poll, which y'all get the opportunity to crap on me in that thing. So check that out. My kids are actually enjoying watching these movies with me and just watching my dumbfounded looks as I try to figure out what the hell I'm watching. So join us for that. If there are any bad movies that you would suggest, shoot them to us on there. You can send us a note on there. You can find us on our website, which is thewilderride.com. Send it to our email address and just say, hey, you might want to look at this one. I'm kind of looking for movies that are free on Amazon Prime or Netflix. Just make it easy on me. So looking for those horrible B movies. So that's it. That's where you find us. And of course, if you want to reach out to Alan or I personally, I am at Walt Murray on Twitter, but I don't really check Twitter that much. And Alan, you can just find by Googling Alan J. Sanders, and he's going to pop up everywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am in social media. I can't hide now. I can't do what our guest did. I can't go dark.
You cannot.
I'm stuck. Anyway, I'm just going to say I had a blast with our guest. I think that was awesome to meet somebody who has had such an amazing career, was willing to share it with us. And all I can say to you, the listener, is come on back next week, because you might not recognize the name. You might not know who it is or why we're putting them on, but everyone has a really cool story to tell, and we just want to continue to allow them to have that format to tell it. But to find out who's coming in next week, you're going to have to be back here for another edition of the Wilder Ride Listener's Lounge.
There you go.
Now, I was going to say Doug Turnbull, but I just realized we've got the pub crawl Friday, and I moved Doug to Friday. So now I'm going to have to try to figure out, can we do Doug a different day? That's why I didn't want to promote him, just in case we have to switch things around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, did you get the feeling with Mike that you didn't know where to start? He had such a crazy background that...
Yeah, but I thought we did a good job kind of stringing it together in chronological order.
I thought so too. But
I
what a
was
life.
blown away. Just blown away. And you could tell he was opening up a little more. He got talking and comfortable. And I love it.
Yeah, I have to stop in and see him next time.